What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday edition of Pelicans Daily, brought to you by Fan Arch. I am your host, David Grubb, editor in chief of thebirdrights.com. First up on today's show, Zion Williamson getting criticized after his historic triple double against the Clippers. As you know, Zion Williamson recorded 22 points, 12 assists, and 10 rebounds in the 127-120 win over the Clippers, his second triple double in the last 2 weeks, both the first two triple doubles of his career. Zion also made Pelicans history, becoming the first player in franchise history to put up at least 10 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists in the fourth quarter of a ball game. He also joins Chris Paul as the only Pelicans to have two triple doubles while shooting better than 60% from the floor. That's the kind of stat line that you'd expect to receive universal praise, especially coming against a contending team against the Clippers, a team that had something to fight for. It wasn't like Zion did this against a bottom feeder. But apparently, that was not enough to impress Shaquille O'Neal. On Inside the NBA, Shaq wasted no time in dismissing Zion's numbers, saying he needed more points, more dominance, just more. And look, we all know Shaq is never shy about calling guys out, though he did say he was done with criticizing current players earlier in the year. Shaq is one of the greatest centers of all time. That's not a question. And in his mind, dominance means a certain thing. It is defined by physicality. He wants Zion to be a force of nature, the kind of player that just overwhelms opponents physically and puts up 30 points without breaking a sweat. But here's the thing, Zion isn't built like Shaq. He's built like Zion Williamson. And what's also funny is that in his entire career, more than 1,400 games, Shaquille O'Neal had a grand total of two triple doubles. That's right. He had one in Orlando with 24 points, 28 rebounds, and 15 blocks. That's really impressive. And one with the Miami Heat. And that one came by the narrowest of margins, 15 points, 11 rebounds, 10 assists. Shaq does have this whole tough love thing with players that he likes, and I get it. You know, he's done that with guys in the past. But this was one battle that I don't think he needed to start. Maybe he could just celebrate, that over the past couple of months, we're starting to get the best play out of Zion Williamson that we've ever seen. The way Zion impacts the game goes beyond just his scoring. His playmaking has taken a huge leap this season, and the Pelicans have had to rely on it without DeJounte Murray. Those 12 assists against the Clippers, that's not padding stats. That's running the offense for the Pelicans, making the right reads, and setting up his teammates in a way that very few players at his position in this league can. Let's also talk about his efficiency. We've seen plenty of high volume scorers in this league, guys who can put up 25 or 30 points, but don't necessarily make their teams better. Zion is different. He did what he did last night, on Tuesday night on 13 shot attempts. He picks his spots. He plays within the offense. And when he's locked in, he said it himself, he's nearly unstoppable. The problem has never been his talent, it's been his availability. And that's where the conversation about Zion always seems to shift. No matter how well he plays, there's always this cloud hanging over him. And it's well earned. People want to see more games from him, more consistency, more dominance. And yes, it is absolutely fair to discuss Zion in those terms. But when you look at what he's done on the court, particularly since he came back in January, it's hard to deny that he's one of the most impactful players in the entire NBA. Through 27 games this season, Zion Williamson is averaging 24 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and 1.3 steals per game while shooting 56% from the floor. Those are all-star type numbers. But Shaq, like a lot of former players these days, tends to look through things through his own lens. And to be fair, expectations for Zion have always been sky high. From the moment he was drafted number one overall, he was expected to be the face of this franchise, a generational talent who could single-handedly change the fortunes for the New Orleans Pelicans. So when Shaq says he needs to see Zion doing this for a top 4 seed in the West, I get it. We all want to see Zion Williamson doing this for the Pelicans when they're a top 4 seed in the West. Winning at a high level does change the way we evaluate players. You're not going to be considered the GOAT, whether it's LeBron, whether it's MJ, whether it's Kobe, whether it's Kareem, whatever, without titles. But let's not act like Zion isn't doing his part. The Pelican struggles this season haven't been because of the way he's played basketball. It's been about injuries, inconsistent lineups, and a tough Western Conference. Those things have played a far bigger role than Zion Williamson's night to night basketball performance. And here's the part that also gets overlooked: Zion is no longer seemingly running from any of this pressure. After that game, when he was asked if this is the best basketball he's played in his career, he didn't thump his chest. He didn't say anything arrogant. What he said was, "That's not for me to decide." What he says is he's feeling the best he's felt in his career, offensively and defensively. And I agree. From my observation watching him this season, Zion is playing his best basketball on both sides of the floor. And I'm not alone in feeling that way. That's a measured response from a young man who still knows that he has higher levels to reach in his NBA career. But make no mistake, he's getting there. He's on an upward arc. He's finding his rhythm. He's stepping into his role as the leader of this team and the face of this franchise. And he's proving that when he's healthy, he's one of the most unique talents this game has ever seen. So the question now is, what's next? Will Zion continue to elevate his game and prove guys like Shaq wrong? Or will the criticism continue no matter how well he plays? One thing's for sure: if Zion Williamson keeps putting up these kinds of performances, at some point, even his harshest critics are going to have to give him his due. Zion certainly elevates whomever he's playing with, but now the question is, what lineups has he worked best with this season? During what is this extended training camp portion of the season for the New Orleans Pelicans, finding out which players complement Zion has clearly been one of the team's goals. Yes, I understand we don't have a giant sample size to work with, but the picture is starting to come into focus a little bit. The starting lineup of Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy, CJ McCollum, DeJounte Murray, and Yves Missi, when it was together, it had an offensive rating of 129.4. That's the good news. That is 13th among all lineups in the NBA this season offensively that played at least as many minutes as they did as a group. Though it wasn't nearly as strong defensively, that quintet still had an overall net rating of 15.7. But as we know, DeJounte is going to be on the sidelines well into next season if he returns at all. While fans seem to be enamored with the double big lineups, the numbers show that that group hasn't nearly been as successful. If you take the group of Zion with CJ, Trey, Yves Missi, and Carlo Makovic, that's been a nightmare defensively, with a defensive rating of 141.1 and a net rating of minus 21.9. While that really shouldn't be a surprise because both of those bigs are rookies and neither of them has the ability to lock down the paint, if the Pelicans are going to play with two bigs with Zion, they need better ones than what they currently have. Either Yves Missi is going to have to take a dramatic leap forward, Carlo Makovic as well, or you got to go outside the organization and find a starting center or a more capable four. If you sub Carlo for Kelly Olynyk into that equation, the defense does get better. The defensive rating climbs to 129.2, but the offense actually gets worse with Kelly on the floor, slipping by a full point. What's the best foursome alongside Zion Williamson so far this season by net rating? That would be Kelly Olynyk, Carlo Makovic, Jose Alvarado, and Jordan Hawkins. In 32 minutes together, 23 minutes together, excuse me, they have a net rating of plus 43, led by their 63.3 defensive mark. However, offensively, that group is awful, posting just a 106.3. Okay, again, that isn't a lot of data, I understand, but what I think it does show is that the Pelicans still have a talent deficit compared to other teams, particularly in the Western Conference. Zion or no Zion, they got to get better. And the Pelicans' defense is as bad as you think it is. All right. One of the other big factors in the Pelicans' defensive collapse this season has been the absence of Herb Jones. Jones is recovering from his rotator cuff surgery on his right shoulder, and though the Pelicans didn't release a timeline for his return, the minimum for basketball players is usually between 6 months to a year. When he was finally shut down, Herb was averaging 10.3 points, down from last season. His shooting had bottomed out, with him shooting 43% from the floor and 30% from three-point range. On the positive side, he was posting career high numbers in assists and steals. It may have felt like, because of his offensive struggles, particularly in shooting the basketball, that Herb Jones's overall impact had diminished for the Pelicans. Let me tell you, it had not. Of the Pelicans' top 10 rotational players this season, Herb Jones still has the best on off numbers of that group, posting a plus 9.3. Zion Williamson behind him at 8.6. Then there's a big drop off to Jose Alvarado, who's at 4.3. That's half of Zion's number. He's followed by Daniel Tice at 2.9, Brandon Boston at 1.2, and CJ McCollum at 1.1. No one else is a net positive. Look, Herb has been first or second on the Pelicans in on off every season of his 4 year career. Every advanced stat will tell you that the Pelicans in general are better with Herb Jones on the court. Zion Williamson, in particular, is better with Herb Jones on the court. His contract is still an incredible bargain. Let's put it in perspective for you. This season, Bruce Brown is making $21 million. Herb is owed approximately $29 million over the next 2 seasons. That is value. In my opinion, the problem this season was that the Pelicans put Herb Jones in harm's way by not solving their problem at center before the season began. Just because someone can do something doesn't mean that they should with regularity. Herb Jones can defend 1 through 5, but he shouldn't be doing it. He's not built like, let's say, Drew Holiday. Herb is a lanky 6'7" and 210 pounds. I think the more apt comparison is Drew's backcourt mate with the Celtics, Derek White. While White is slightly shorter than Herb at 6'4", they are both elite perimeter defenders. They both spent 4 years in college and came into the NBA as older rookies, 23 years old. Derek White is an offensive threat now, but he struggled offensively when he arrived in the league. Over his first 4 seasons, Derek White averaged 10.8 points, 3.2 rebounds, 3.4 assists, and a combined 1.6 steals and blocks. He shot 45% from the floor and 36% from distance in 188 games in that span. You compare him to Herb Jones, and over his first 4 seasons, of course, season 4 cut short, Herb has posted averages of 10.1 points, 3.8 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and a combined 2.3 steals and blocks. Herb is shooting 47% from the floor and 37% from long distance over 240 games. It's pretty comparable, if you ask me. If the Pelicans can keep Herb Jones on the perimeter instead of having him get beat up in the post, I think Herb can have a similar career arc. If you remember, Herb was flirting with a 50-40-90 season last year. A more consistent and defined role on both sides of the court would absolutely help him reach his potential. And I'm not willing at this point to bet against his work ethic, professionalism, and his desire to get better just yet. Herb Jones's value is still high. The Pelicans just have to do a better job of putting him in position to succeed. All right, finally, we're going to talk about it's game day for the Pelicans. They're back in action on Thursday night as they host the Orlando Magic. Orlando 30-36 on the season, good for 8th in the Eastern Conference, but they are just 3-7 over their last 10 games, including 6 losses in their last 7 games. However, the Pelicans can't take anyone lightly at this stage, certainly not the Magic. New Orleans has lost 6 in a row against Orlando. No one on this current roster has ever beaten the Magic in the Smoothie King Center. The last win for the Pels in the series came in 2021. Brandon Ingram led the Pelicans with 31 points that night. Zion didn't play. Trey Murphy had 6 points in that game. We'll break down what happens for you tomorrow on that edition of Pelicans Daily. So that's going to be a wrap for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, again, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, share it with your friends, share it with fellow Pelicans fans, and please let me know what you think about everything we're talking about each and every day. You can also follow me on social media at DM Grubb and check out what I'm writing at thebirdwrites.com for more Pelicans coverage. Till the next time, take care.